What's up, everyone? Welcome to Fire Footwear. I'm just trying something a little bit different, a little bit of a different background, give you a little different feel of what's going on. Where are sneakers today? I was thinking about this the other day. I was listening to the In Kicks We Trust podcast. Go check them out wherever it is that you find your podcast. And they were talking about how retail chains have changed in terms of sneaker culture today. I've talked about on previous episodes that retail stores were a bread and butter, really, of the culture. And Nike over the last 5 or 6 years has gone direct to consumer, or at least they attempted to. And in doing so, they cut out a lot of the middlemen as it related to sneaker culture. We're talking about your Foot Lockers and places like this. A lot of these stores existed during a time in which there was a lot of hype. I remember being a kid, 10, 12, 13 years old. Going to Foot Locker was an experience. It was a cool place to be. And then when I worked at Sports Authority, being in the footwear section, seeing all the hype that they had up there, that actually was really cool too. And so when you look at sneaker culture today, you ask yourself, how has it changed? And I think the biggest way that it has changed has been the advent of the internet and more specifically social media. Sneaker releases used to be an event. You used to go outside. You used to wait in line for your chance to buy sneakers. Many times you went out there and wasted your time in trying to buy sneakers. It's not that way today. The way that it is today is that you can get up out of your bed and basically buy any shoe that you want as long as it's available. A lot of times you can get shoes after they have been made available. Release days used to be appointment television, as it were. You used to have to be ready, and you had to know exactly what you wanted, and you had to know exactly how to get it or multiple ways to get it. And now during this time, being able to sit on your couch, wake up right before a release, not having to leave the house, to me, it does take away a little bit of the special nature of sneakers. Not fully, but it does take away, in my opinion. That's one way things have changed. And I'm not necessarily sure it's changed for the better in that way. In some regards, it definitely has. Being able to get what you want, when you want, is a good thing. But I think there is something to be said. There's some value to be bestowed on the work that goes into getting sneakers, and we just don't see that today. We already talked about the brick and mortar stores and how Nike specifically has tried to get away from these brick and mortar stores. I think that's to the detriment of the culture. Very similarly to being able to buy shoes online, going to a specific store that is almost meant for sneaker culture, to me, being able to do that is part of the experience. And to me, it helps keep the culture alive. I'm not necessarily sure that the culture dies because these stores are no longer that way, but even if they exist, I think that the customer experience within these stores changes as well. More specifically, it changes in how customer service treats you. A lot of times back in the day, you'd go there and you'd almost be treated like royalty when you went to just about any store.
Get on with the ceremony!
It's not that way anymore. And I think the reason being is there have been business decisions, cost-cutting ventures that have made it so that the employees at these stores aren't as incentivized to be as friendly as they used to be as helpful. Not to mention the fact that when I worked at Sports Authority, we got tons of training on what to tell our customers in order to sell this merchandise. A new Kobe came in, which is something that I looked at a lot. We got trained on what it was. And sometimes representatives from these brands would come to the store and give us their own spiel, teach us everything that we needed to know about this shoe because they knew the more that I knew, the more shoes would get sold. Not necessarily a guarantee, but I do think that it is worthwhile in the fact that these brands were putting money and resources into the people who were selling the shoes. Nowadays, you walk into a store, and this is not a complaint from an old person, but customer service just isn't the same. The people are there on their phones, they're talking to themselves. There's not as much of a red carpet that goes out. Now you have to do a lot of the work yourself. But the thing is, there is a lot of heat to be had in these stores. You go to the Nike outlet, you go to DTLR, you go to Foot Locker, you're gonna find some heat now because there are so many shoes that are available and they're just not as hype as they once was. Another way that the culture has changed is certainly social media. Social media has changed our entire society in ways that I think aren't as positive as were once perceived. Nowadays, we can sit behind a keyboard, we can sit behind a phone, and we can say anything to anybody we want. And really, there's not that many consequences. Unless you're a super famous person, there really aren't any consequences to anything that you say on social media. But as far as sneakers is concerned, social media has created this sort of allure that we can see everything super, super early. I've talked many times about the fact that I don't like early looks so early on. Yes, when a shoe eventually comes out, we're very hyped for it. Hopefully the pictures and the information that we have been given are accurate, but for the most part, it kind of almost ruins the experience. We feel like we already know what's coming, and so by the time it comes around, it's almost performative in the fact that we just say, click, get the shoes, look at them, tell everybody that's fire on social media, and then move on. And to me, that kind of takes away a little bit from the experience. But I just mentioned that we posted on social media. And that's another element of social media that I feel like maybe is to the detriment of the culture, is that it has caused, and this isn't just in sneakers, it's everywhere, but it has caused this sort of effect of my collection is better than yours. The shoes that I'm wearing today are cooler than yours. And maybe that's just the natural evolution of that's the way that it used to be in the street, so to speak. When you wore your Jordans to school, when you wore the shoes that you felt fly into school, it was to tell other people that you were cooler than they were. And so maybe this is an extension, but I think by extension, what it does is almost divides us a little bit, because some people don't have the access to these shoes. A lot of people don't have the access to these shoes. And when they see these social media influencers posting about their entire collection, many times we feel FOMO, we feel left out. And I think that it does cause a little bit of bitterness and resentment within the culture. The thing is, your collection doesn't have to be what somebody else's is. It should be what you want it to be, and you should feel happy with it. And I think sometimes social media can actually make that harder to do because we feel like we should be matching something that somebody else has.
Wow, that's mine! Wow, little right here, that's mine!
But on the positive side of that, and I certainly have felt it through this channel and through the podcast, is that social media can connect people within the culture. Content is a great thing. Content creation is a great thing. I love making content. But one of the best things about making content is the fact that it connects me with people who connect with the content that I'm making. A lot of people reach out to me and say, I love sneakers, and sometimes I don't have anybody to talk about it with. And you, me, are accessible, and that makes me feel like I have somebody to talk about this with. When I'm watching your videos, when I'm listening to your podcast, it makes me feel like you're just one of my friends who I love talking about shoes with. That's connection. Another connection is being able to connect with other content creators. That's a great thing also. I've met a lot of people and started real friendships with people through this game we call content, more specifically sneaker content. And I think social media allows that. I can be friends with people who live in other states, even other countries. And we wouldn't have been able to do that, say 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so while the game has changed a lot, I do think that there is positives to be had. We have so many shoes that we have access to, so many ways to get them. And while that is a change, and sometimes it can take away from the allure of sneakers, being able to get something that you want is a great thing. Being able to bond with people because you have the accessibility is a great thing. Yes, there isn't as much hype around it, but who cares? Sometimes it's just about getting the shoes that you want and being able to share in that with somebody else. The last thing that I can think of is comfort over cool. At least that's what I call it. And what I mean is when you go out and you see younger people, I'm 42 years old, almost 42, so I'm relatively old in comparison to younger people today. You go out to places and you look at these high school kids maybe right out of high school, they're all wearing runners, they're all wearing Hokas or On Cloud or Asics, something like that. And what they have done is they have sacrificed cool for comfort, because they'll tell you, I'm on my feet all day, or my feet hurt. And maybe again, this is a natural evolution of maybe we did too much to be cool back in the day. We sacrificed too much of our bodies to be cool, and that's why our knees hurt and our hips hurt or whatever. It doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, it just means that it is a paradigm shift in the culture. These younger people in the culture that are coming up are looking at something different. They don't want to wear uncomfortable Jordan retros. They don't want to wear anything that's uncomfortable, no matter how cool they look. People in my age bracket and above would never do that because we just live the culture differently. So that's something that I point out. But I will say this, it just means that the culture can be expanded to more and more people. If runners are your thing, by all means, let runners be your thing. It doesn't have to be everybody's thing. It just means, like I always say, there is something for everybody in this culture. There's probably many other ways that sneakers have changed, and I would love to hear from you about things that you've seen about how the culture has changed. Let me know down in the comments. And of course, you can call Fire Footwear. Area code 202-643-9170 is the number to do that. Don't forget the +1 country code for those outside the US. I hope this finds everybody well. I hope this finds everybody safe. I'll talk to you in the next video. This is Fire Footwear.